Hi, I'm Joe Freeman of the Oregonian. This is Mike Richman of the Oregonian, and we're bringing you a Trail Blazers postgame video report. The Blazers have lost here Wednesday night at the Moda Center to the Los Angeles Clippers, 109-98. But the final score in the game mattered very little on a night that was very intriguing for reasons outside the game. Because of a unusual and odd, and I've never seen it before, although apparently it has happened, quirk in the submitting of rosters before the game, CJ McCollum was ruled inactive. Little background on how this works before we get into the nitty-gritty. Coaches submit active and inactive rosters at latest an hour before tip-off. Because of a mistake in that submission, CJ McCollum was accidentally left off that roster, so he was ruled inactive. A league source tells me that at this point, the Los Angeles Clippers coach Doc Rivers was given the option to allow CJ McCollum to play anyway. He politely declined, therefore ruling him inactive. CJ did not find out whether or not he was playing until during pregame introductions when he sitting on the Blazers bench. They did not call his name. Instead, Mark Mason, the Blazers public address announcer, called Alan Crabb instead. Going around the Blazers locker room after the game, each player said the same thing. They didn't find out until that moment. Damian Lillard was sitting next to CJ on the bench at this point, and he leaned over to Dame right beforehand and said, "Hey man, I might not be able to play." That's how Dame found out right before his name was called. A very wacky, very unusual thing. As you might expect, the Blazers came out flat as a result, losing their second leading scorer and second leading assist maker. After the game, Terry Stotts kind of owned it, said it was on me, it was my mistake. CJ, through kind of gritted teeth, said mistakes happen, you kind of move on, didn't speak in depth about it, but said, you know, really wasn't on him, he didn't have much of an effect. But this isn't really the first run-in we've had with these two teams.
No, this is a strange rivalry. The Clippers have the sort of the unlikely title of villain in the league. Every team seems to have beef with the Clippers, and the Blazers are among them with the beef. It started in preseason. The Blazers blew a 35-point lead, and at the end of that game there was an exchange at midcourt between Terry Stotts and Doc Rivers. Stotts kind of blew it off, but Doc Rivers apologized and said maybe I handled it poorly. They were clearly having an exchange of words that weren't particularly nice. Then in a game earlier this year in LA, Terry Stotts fouled DeAndre Jordan what seemed like 200 times in an 18-point game and extended what should have been a 2-hour blowout into a 3-hour festival of free throws. I don't think that sat well with the Clippers either. And so then you saw tonight when Doc had a chance to, you know, let one of the best players and a budding young star into the lineup. He said no, and at the end of the game you saw a interesting, somewhat comical and cold-blooded exchange where Doc Rivers said, "Hey CJ, have a nice night," and CJ McCollum kind of nodded at him like, thanks Doc, thanks Glenn, we appreciate you.
Yeah, that kind of exchange happened as the teams separated after the game and went their separate ways towards the post-game locker rooms. Interestingly enough, in Doc Rivers' post-game availability, he said he's made that mistake twice over the last 2 seasons and lost a player for active and inactive reasons. And he, despite his gamesmanship, said that sort of lobbied for the league to change the rule. He says he doesn't understand why 15 guys are paid money and only 13 suit up for each game, and that is the NBA rule. 13 of 15 guys are allowed to suit up for a game, and basically lobbied for the rule to be changed. He said he's asked the league to make a change in the past and sort of lobbied for that and kind of made another continuation of that. Outside of that, the game,
who knows what happened?
I will say this, Clippers, one of the better teams in the league. They won their 7th game in a row despite playing without Blake Griffin. And it's hard for a team to come out, the Blazers that is, without one of their best players after game planning for 2 days at the last second to learn that guy's not going to be played. They understandably came out flat, rallied late and trimmed it to single digits. What had been a 23-point deficit, trimmed it to single digits late, but it was too little too late on a night that didn't have CJ McCollum.
I thought the most sort of telling quote in the locker room that had anything to do with the basketball game, because no one was talking about that, including me and Joe, was Mason Plumlee said that they're not good enough to only play one half of basketball, and that's what we saw tonight. They're not good enough to come back, particularly against a playoff type team from 23 down. They made a late push, but it wasn't enough. And lucky for the Blazers, the Friday is about as tough a game as you could possibly play. The 33-2 Golden State Warriors, best start in 35 games in NBA history, they come to town. So Blazers better play a full game against them.
We'll see you then.